How do you insult one of the biggest pop bands on the planet? Apparently, by trying to honor them. South Korean K-pop megastars BTS have just announced that they are boycotting next year's Grammys. It follows the introduction of a new award, Best Asian Pop Music Performance. BTS was widely tipped to be in the running for several of the Grammys' top honors for their recent comeback album, but now the group says it won't submit any music to any category. Each of its 7 members posted to Instagram, quote, "We hope that music is heard and loved for what it is, rather than being defined by region or language." Now, the Grammys boss, Harvey Mason Jr., said he, quote, "respected the decision, but that the Asian pop category was created to celebrate the depth and diversity and extraordinary growth of pop artistry coming out of Asia. More categories mean more artists' work is recognized." So where's the line between inclusivity and giving recognition when it's overdue, and perhaps coming off as a little patronizing? For more on this, we're joined by Maria Sherman, music reporter at the Associated Press, and Professor Grace Kao, who, among other things, researches the sociology of music, especially K-pop, at Yale University. Welcome to the both of you.
Thank you for having me.
So Maria, let's start with you. Maria, let's start with you. Walk us through this. Has any major act ever refused to submit to the Grammys like this before?
There have been quite a few instances of big artists kind of choosing not to submit to the Grammys. What happens and what makes this quite noteworthy is all 7 members posted the same message and really wanted to show kind of transparently that this is where their hearts are at. I'll say the biggest example is probably Morgan Wallen. He's a huge country star here in the United States. He rarely submits for Grammys, but doesn't make public statements about it and hasn't for a while. You'll frequently see him included on lists of biggest snubs of the Grammy Awards. You can't really snub somebody who doesn't set themselves up for a nomination or apply in that way. But that's a sort of different, kind of unique situation. In the past, he's been disqualified and limited from award shows in the early 2020s because of a racial slur video that emerged. It was very specific, very to him. But there have also been instances of artists like Drake and The Weeknd who have both been public and critical of the Grammys. Drake in the past had withdrawn submissions of a few of his albums. In fact, there was a period where he was nominated for Best Rap Album and Best Rap Performance and asked that the Grammy Awards, the Recording Academy, remove his nomination. That's pretty rare. And then, 2 years later, he submitted a joint rap album. And in the case of The Weeknd, he said he would no longer submit for Grammys in the early 2020s as well, criticizing the Recording Academy, calling it corrupt at one point, and then changing his tune a little bit. He submitted his last album for Grammys. He performed at the Grammys this year. He didn't win any Grammys, but it seems like he was sort of taking a back step. So there is some pop culture history of this happening, but it still feels unique in that BTS is doing it for what seems to be a brand new category, or at least announcing it a month after this new category had been revealed.
Now, Grace, if we could cross over to you, what exactly do you make of BTS's move and of their statement that music shouldn't be divided by region or language?
Well, first of all, I think this award would have meant a lot for them, having a Grammy, because it's really one of the few remaining awards that they have yet to receive. It is a big sacrifice for them to do this. So I know that this must have hurt them deeply to have this category. And I just want to say that the award itself is just, I was reading the wording again and again. And I can't quite figure out what it's for. Is it for a song? Is it for a body of work? It's sort of like for a body of work. But it's just like, here's an award for an Asian artist. So, miscellaneous. So I didn't quite understand the goal of the award either.
All right, now, Maria, if you could talk us through the band's own history with the Grammys. 3 Grammy nominations and 0 wins, if I'm not mistaken.
They've actually been up for 5 nominations and haven't won. Their history at the Grammys is really part of a larger K-pop history at the Grammys. Before their first nomination in 2021, a K-pop act hadn't been nominated for the Grammys. which is quite interesting. They've performed at the Grammys twice in 2021 and 2022. They've presented at the Grammys. It seems as though when we talk about even recognizing Korean pop acts at the Grammys, we're really talking about BTS as sort of the first of this wave, in many ways also in their recognition of K-pop as this huge musical force in the American music market as well, right? 2017 is usually seen as the year the US really started to embrace this the way that the global music economy had, and a lot of that was due to BTS. I'll also say that no K-pop act had ever won a Grammy before this year, and that was Golden from Netflix's hit K-pop Demon Hunters. So it's also an interesting conversation of, does that count as a K-pop award? So even beyond just BTS here, there's this really interesting kind of relationship historically with the Recording Academy and artists like BTS.
Now, Grace, as we were just hearing there, BTS has kind of a complicated relationship with the Grammys. No wins so far. So do you think that this new category, after it was announced, that it kind of felt like a consolidation prize to them?
Absolutely. That it just, everyone feels like it's their turn, but, they just released this fantastic album, but the album actually has quite a bit of English. So, even thinking about this particular award, a category, it's again not clear whether, the lead single Swim, which is completely in English, does that count? What actually counts? And the idea that there's something called Asian music is a little bit odd to me. Again, we don't know what that is. So it did seem like this prize was sort of constructed perhaps for BTS. There are many, many wonderful artists out there, but I think, of course, there's no other act from Korea or other places in East Asia that are as prominent as BTS.
Now, Maria, from your reporting, do we know if any other K-pop artists or more broadly any Asian voices were consulted about forming this new category and this new award?
Yeah, this is the big question, right? The process of how new categories come to be at the Grammys is a bit complicated. What we do know is that there is a proposal process where somebody within the Recording Academy, likely a team of people, sort of present a proposal. They explain why they think this category should exist. It's voted on by members, it's evaluated by them, and submitted by them, of course, and then ultimately voted on by those members to see if it should move forward. And this happens every year. There's quite often rule changes. There's quite often new categories being introduced every year. However, any sort of transparency of which members are proposing this and which ones are voting on it, that's not sort of public record. We do know that the Recording Academy invites a lot of new members every year. This year, they sent out, I think, 4,000 invitations. And actually, EJ from K-pop Demon Hunters, who sings voice of Rumi, mentioned her acceptance of it. But beyond that, there is really no transparency. And that is only something that the Recording Academy would have to be willing to sort of volunteer, because as it stands, there isn't really transparency behind the specific names that go into deciding which new categories get to exist.
Yeah, and that brings me back to the statement that we read out earlier where the Grammys boss basically said this was about celebrating K-pop and Asian music as opposed to separating it off. So if we take his statement at face value, let's compare it to the Latin Grammys, which were created in 2000 because many Latin artists felt overlooked by the main Grammys. But that is an entirely separate show rather than a new category. So Grace, what do you think? Do these type of awards celebrate artists or separate them?
Well, I think it's all a matter of timing, right? So I was imagining that perhaps the West's first introduction to K-pop was really Psy's Gangnam Style, and that was in 2012. And so I think, let's go back in time around that year, if there were an introduction to best Asian pop or K-pop, I could see, well, this is a way to include other forms of music or music from other places. But, BTS has been around for a while now. They're as mainstream as it gets. So it just seems like it's a weird way to say, oh, you're really included now, but actually we're going to try to make a new category that reminds us that you're actually foreign, you're not really one of us. And I want to go back to another point. I think some people have mentioned, why is it that they waited a month to announce this? And quite a few of their fans, I'm not taking credit for this, but their fans are known as ARMY. And quite a few ARMY on social media have said that it is linked to the song number 29 on the new album, which is basically this famous bell that's rung. And it's just the duration of the song is just that ringing. And again, they announced this on July 29th. So 29 had some sort of symbolism. BTS is really into having numbers and symbolism behind the number. So I just want to say it's not as if they suddenly decided to do this. I'm sure they've been thinking about it for a while.
Yeah, Maria, that's actually an interesting point. What do you think? Do you think BTS's relationship to their fans helped provoke this move on their part? I mean, in their statement, they didn't directly say why they were issuing this boycott. Are they motivated by some pressure from their own fan base?
I think citing the statement is really key here because they use the language of not being separated by region or language. Language, of course, is used in the actual description of this new category that it's supposed to be recognizing performance, which is typically a song performance of an artist. And this is an award that would go to the artist, not a songwriter. Meaningful use of the Asian language. So I understand why fans sort of quickly saw a connection between perhaps this award and their statement until BTS makes that connection explicit. We can only really speak to the timing, which I agree with Grace is quite interesting. Historically, when there have been new categories introduced by the Recording Academy at the Grammys that have been met with a little bit of sort of controversy or conversation from fans, timing is a big question. It kind of reminds me of the creation of Traditional and Contemporary Country Album of the Year last year, which happened right after Beyonce won for Cowboy Carter. A lot of people thought a Black woman wins for Best Country Album for the first time, and now they create this division. The Recording Academy says it's been introduced to further diversify and recognize the growing genre evolutions of country music. And what does that mean in a world where traditional can be quite loaded and contemporary can be sort of racialized? And I think the conversation that happened then is very similar to what we're seeing fans respond to now. I will say in that particular instance, I spoke to the Recording Academy and they told me that when a category is introduced, it's usually after years of conversation. Granted, don't know specifically about this new category. I'm hoping to get to talk to some of these people like the CEO, Harvey Mason Jr., to get some clarity. But the sort of timing of this award arriving the year where BTS has this huge comeback, I understand why fans responded the way they are. I can understand where that thinking comes from.
Okay, and Grace, finally, a question to you. What do you think that this moment tells us, if anything, about how the music industry thinks about categorizing non-Western artists?
Yeah, I think, at the end of the day, dollars matter. And if you look at global physical sales, last year, Taylor Swift was #1, but the next 19 albums are all K-pop or J-pop or Mandopop or Canton Pop's albums, mostly K-pop. So, Asia, music from Asia is here. It's been here for a while. And I think it would make sense for people in the West, in the US, to recognize this. And really, I count myself as a K-pop fan, and there are lots of people in the US that listen to K-pop. And I think the frustration with the language part is really, K-pop artists were told that they're not being played on radio in America because they're not singing in English. So more and more of them are singing more songs in English. And then now they're being told, well, actually, no, you're from Asia, so we're going to put you in this other category. So it's as if they can't win.
All right, I'm afraid we'll have to leave it there. But a big thanks to Professor Grace Kao from Yale University and Maria Sherman, a music reporter at the Associated Press. Thank you very much for talking to us today.
Thank you for having me.
And of course, we'd love to hear from you now. What do you make of BTS's boycott? And should award shows create separate categories for regional artists? Tell us your thoughts in the comments below. And if you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button and also subscribe to our channel. I'm Aaron Tilton Berlin. Thanks for watching.